last day. Sounds like some people were encouraged to be here, like the ones from CWA, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, great to be here. Lots of the real experts are sitting out here. I'm not going to introduce them all, but trust me, it's true. And, you know, we have some, in our case, Josh and I, a pretty cool story to tell. But that story, this joint organizing that we call the TU, and actually a little joke, I'm not sure who did these bracelets, but normally, like what they say would jump out. In this case, you sort of need a magnifying glass. But what you can see, if you can read the bracelet, is the TU there's TU Verdi, TU CWA. So why did we create the TU? The idea was that workers here, like Josh, he'll tell you more, were joining both CWA and Verdi, the big German United Service Workers, which is what Verdi stands for. And why is that? Because you know the situation in the U.S., all but the end of collective bargaining, and how do we, bring it back? And so, I did one of these action sessions with the Brazilians 2 days ago, and they figured out 25 years ago, in worse shape than us, how to bring it back. I'm not going to go back through that workshop, but a good example that you can reverse graphs, and in this case we're talking about a multinational that in Germany not only has 100% collective bargaining coverage, and that 100% at Deutsche Telekom, 115,000 or so employees who are covered by the collective agreements. It goes way up into levels of the company. So for example, in a retail store, it's everybody in the store. There's nobody who's not in the union in the store. I forget the exact term there. I should remember for the store manager. They don't call it that. But anyway, there's nobody that's not in the union in every retail store, as opposed to there's no IT people who aren't covered by collective bargaining there. So US folks in the room, think about that versus where we are. And that explains why we did this in that collaborative way. But so Verdi, as you'll hear and you'll see in this video in a couple minutes, Verdi is awesome. And the support of, not the institution, which is what we used to think of as global union work, but the support of now thousands of Verdi members out of the 105,000 at Deutsche Telekom who are members. Virtually all, think about this, virtually all 105,000 members know who Josh is. They don't know me, which is fine. More importantly, they know who Josh is. A few thousand might know me because I've been there a bunch of times to help sort this out and speak to their Congress. The much more important thing is that not only do they know who Josh is, they wear his picture on their shirt on action days. And so when we think about how do we bring back a labor movement in this country, one that really can stand up and fight back. This week we've heard about partnering with communities. This is really about partnering with unions in other countries who understand full well that as strong as the union is at Deutsche Telekom, with virtually everybody represented, with rights to have limited strikes, rolling strikes on an ongoing basis, with wage increases, real wage increases, subtract inflation, real wage increases at Deutsche Telekom every year, and I was involved in their last strike wave last year. Real wage increases of over 2%, in other words, 5% wage increases with 2 to 3% inflation. I could do a poll I sort of did yesterday. Nobody in the big hall, US union delegates, gets real wage increases on a sustained basis. Right, Jacob? Verizon? Company has enough money to pay to pay $130 billion for the part of Verizon Wireless they don't own, but we have healthcare cuts. And so that's how we want to think about this. We don't want to think about it as some global adventure story. We want to think about it as what can workers do when we actually involve working class people in more than one nation working at the same country, and then others who join in to support. That's what's cool about this story. So The other thing that's great is the support, and I do want to mention it. The AFL-CIO organizing department, Teresa is the head of global organizing there, the Solidarity Center, and Shauna, the International Affairs Department. I'm not sure who's there from there, but all that's only the beginning. And then the ITUC, Sharon Burrow, if you heard her speak yesterday, gave a shout out. She was with me in Charleston, South Carolina, where we had Josh's counterparts, TU members in the call center there, who were, in that case, teamed up with the Berlin call center. This is another key element. Not just union to union, but call center to call center, and now retail store workers to retail store workers, teamed up permanently, not a one-time deal. And the folks that are going back and forth, which they are, Germany, US, are frontline workers as part of this campaign. Sarah mentioned Jobs with Justice. We had a little celebration, right, Ron, a couple nights ago, and I spoke for a minute, literally. And what I said is that we always remember the campaigns, but that really what everything is about in organizing is relationships and the campaigns. It's the real belief that we'll stick at this for as long as it takes, one day longer than greed and pigs on the other side. One day longer. And that's what you see in this campaign. So I'm going to say a little more after we see this video, and in case you're wondering about Josh and weren't in the room, so yes, he was a key activist in the TU in the United States, not just in his own call center in Wichita, but really in the whole network that we have of at least a dozen or more call centers that have active membership in the TU. And again, this TU is not just about how do we get through the torture of the NLRB. We do use those tactics at times. It's about how do we build a network. There's 20,000 workers at Deutsche Telekom in the US. You know, they're not like out of reach given our worst of any democracy labor law in this country. So this is frontline workers, there's 20,000. Call center workers, not the supervisors that would be in the union in Germany, in many cases some of the most active. Not the store manager, but the retail store workers. And the frontline technicians, which is the smallest group. Adds up to about 20,000. More than 1,000 are now members of the TU. They're not focused on how do we win an NLRB election, although again, tactically we do things like that. Store workers in Harlem next week will have an NLRB election, and of course the company is torturing them, literally. Bringing them into a basement room and grilling them. And we actually have interesting documentation of that. I won't get into that here. But when, you know, a lot of the elements, again, of this week are here in this campaign. Because you build an organization, not an organizing drive. It's not about what will the CWA or what will Verdi do. It's about what will members in Verdi do. And what will members of the TU do. And what will CWA members who work in an AT&T mobility store or call center do. Because understanding the connection in an industry that's mostly non-union, except the 42,000 that have organized at AT&T Mobility, and the 1,000 now in the TU, that how these fights are connected in so many different ways. And then, to go back to Charleston, where Sharon Burrow was there with me, and Teresa was there as well, in January, what she saw was the campaign in part led by the community, by faith-based leaders. Jim Clyburn was there, who's the minority whip, Democratic Party whip in the House of Representatives. And he told the story of his wife came with him, and he talked about how he met her in jail 50 years ago as a civil rights young activist at college. And Joyce, one of our key leaders there, who Josh knows, at that call center, talked about how when she was in high school at 16, she marched and got arrested with the hospital workers in Charleston, who were among the first to try to organize in the United States before we had a law for hospital workers, and how that was connected directly to the civil rights movement in Charleston. So it's about how do we build these kinds of connections with long-term, just answer questions. They're supposed to bridge to sales, as it's called, and they have targets, and he was at the top of that. And when he got fired, the Verdi partners, not just Dortmund, which is the partner call center for Wichita, but across Germany took up his cause. And in the last few weeks, literally thousands of German workers at Deutsche Telekom have worn these shirts. I'm not sure these videos changed, whether that made it into this video or not, that you'll see now. It says, "I am Josh Coleman. I am Josh." And last Saturday night, the CEO, René Obermann of Deutsche Telekom, I'm pretty sure this did not make it in here, had a party in Berlin, in a fancy location. And the Verdi folks did some cool stuff with computers and lights on the building. If you've seen that. We've seen that at Verizon, right? Putting up messages on the building, you know, all the way through the event from another location. But more importantly, 20 of them bought tickets, went inside, and took off their shirts, and they had, not this red shirt, we expect better, but the red shirt that said, "I am Josh." And this stuff is going to go on day after day in Germany, as well as the organizing here. And so I know that all of us, whether we're Solidarity Center supporters or the AFL, or Sharon, or me, or anybody in CWA who's ever been an organizer, that's really what we're proud about in this. And hopefully, as Josh will tell you, I mean, there's a lot of real issues that drive this in these call centers. It's not just the terror of what happens when you organize. It's also the incredible contrast, which they're now more aware of than ever.
It works when I tested it. I can honestly say there's not been a week in the last that I've come to work and not found out that another one of my
These are
coworkers.
T-Mobil workers in the U.S. These are German workers.
Verdi arbeitet schon sehr viele Jahre mit den Communication Workers of America zusammen. Wir haben eine gemeinsam weltweite Kampagne begonnen unter dem
We expect better, the slogan.
Wir erwarten Besseres von der Deutschen Telekom.
Wie ich gehört habe, welche Arbeitsbedingungen bei einem Tochterunternehmen von der Deutschen Telekom hier herrschen, konnte ich es gar nicht so glauben und da wollte ich mich selber davon überzeugen.
Aber ich bin auch erschrocken über das, was die Kolleginnen und Kollegen in Amerika berichten, über das, was sie erleben bei der T-Mobile.
I'm Joshua Coleman and I've been working at T-Mobile since December 13th of 2009.
Just wanted to say how great it feels to have all the support from Verdi. We wouldn't know how to make this a reality without the support of those strong union members who already have what we're aspiring to have.
Dass wir in Deutschland nicht gewerkschaftlich organisiert sind. Aber wir sagen euch, dass in Deutschland über 2 Millionen Verdi-Mitglieder hinter euch stehen.
Dignity and respect, the right to work without fear, to join a union and be able to have a voice. These things are things workers want all around the world.
Well, I'm happy to join TU because I feel like the things that matter to me, I mean, they probably matter to a couple of my other coworkers too.
Das Beste steht ja auf dem Band drauf, ne?
This wristband is signification of unity. We're here united to let them know that we should not and we will not be taken advantage of anymore.
There's a lot of things that T-Mobile needs to change, and we need to step up and start making our voices heard. We need to make it happen.
So we have power if we all just get together and work together.
It takes a movement, in this case a global movement, to get justice.
You kick ass in the USA and we kick ass in Germany.
Good afternoon, I'm Joshua Coleman from Wichita, Kansas. and I want to talk about what the partnership program means for me. I worked over 3 years at T-Mobile USA, a company owned by Deutsche Telekom in Germany. Now I'm helping to organize workers into TU, the union for T-Mobile workers. I've been involved with activism since 2008, and I was on the internal organizing committee at TU since early 2010. And I will visit Germany this November to speak with Verdi activists. In fact, I welcomed Verdi activists, workers, counselors from Dortmund to Wichita in March earlier this year. Now, I was a top performer at my call center in Wichita. In all of 2011 and several months of 2012, I had the highest level of sales in my call center of 500 workers. I was chosen several times to help train new workers because I was effective on the phone. Management even gave me a prize, an all-expense paid trip or two to Puerto Rico, an award given only to the top 50 call center performers nationwide. T-Mobile disciplined me for wearing this t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, which states, "We expect better from T-Mobile and Deutsche Telekom." I used to wear a CWA t-shirt every Tuesday to express my support for organizing. Unfortunately, on Tuesday, January 31st, last year, 2012, a vice president from corporate headquarters visited my workplace unannounced. 2 weeks later, my trip to Puerto Rico was canceled by management, alleging that my attendance was not perfect. Even though my intranet performance page that keeps track of my attendance and my other metrics clearly indicated that I was in compliance with company rules. Trip canceled. T-Mobile canceled my bonuses for 3 months in fall last year, reducing my pay by roughly $2,000. They increased their monitoring of my calls. I had a target on my back. In March, earlier this year, during the Verdi visit to Wichita, I gave an interview with a local television station during which I expressed worker concerns about job security, and I welcomed my brothers and sisters from Verdi who were visiting with T-Mobile employees. In early May this year, I twice posted comments on Facebook about how the company was making our jobs harder, how they had frozen wages, and how they had eliminated employee benefits. 3 days later, on May 9th this year, I was fired. Management accused me of calling back a customer too many times. I believe it was for my union activities because I broke no rules and continued to be a high performer. 10 days before I was fired, I was ranked number 7 in the call center of about 500 employees. They ordered me to leave the premises, but they would allow me to return to pick up my personal effects. When I returned 6 days later, I discovered that T-Mobile had destroyed my notebook on union activities. We reached an NLRB settlement on the destruction of my notebook, and we are appealing an adverse ruling on my firing. The problems at T-Mobile US, unfortunately, they go beyond my case. The company has a systematic program to marginalize the union. So it trains every call center worker with a presentation that calls CWA a third party, holds mandatory meetings on the union, and casually makes threats to trainees that they will lose their jobs if they're active in TU. The line is consistent, however it's made. The union has no place at T-Mobile. The result is a tremendous amount of fear at T-Mobile workplaces. Workers learn very quickly that belonging to the union is dangerous for their jobs, and they know that managers are watching them, that security guards will record their license plates if they accept a flyer from the union. The partnership program with Verdi is a way to cut through that fear and turn management actions into campaign tactics. So we have allies, and they have our back. And we report what managers do in Germany. We are silent no longer. On August 29th, less than 2 weeks ago, the Verdi members publicized my firing during a day of solidarity. So activists distributed literature on my firing and t-shirts with the slogan, "We're all Josh." And they were shared at 22 workplaces to over 10,000 workers. Everywhere there were pictures of Verdi's amazing solidarity. The actions were covered by at least 5 newspapers, and personally I was awed by the actions taken on my behalf in Germany. So the solidarity that Verdi brings to the table is also tremendously inspirational, not just for me, but for T-Mobile workers everywhere. I mean, here we are talking with the union members from the same company, knowing they're spending their vacation time to travel 5,000 miles to spend with me and my coworkers. So So our Verdi partners show us that it can be different at T-Mobile. And we compare working conditions, we compare salary and benefits. We know what it would be like to have a strong union like Verdi here in the US. Together, CWA and Verdi, we will win at T-Mobile. Thank you.